In 1712, just after the War of Succession, Spain was in need of capital to continue to fund its government and its people. To remedy this situation, they looted from their colonies, who had vast deposits of gold, silver, and jewels. Once gathered, they made to travel back to the homeland, but they instead encountered disaster. These 11 ships are of great interest to divers and treasure hunters alike, due to the vastness of the fortune of which the riches are incalculable. With 4 of the ships still undiscovered, the many treasures of the Spanish ships remain up for grabs. Over 300 years ago, in 1715, all 11 ships that transported this vast treasure from Cuba back to Spain perished over a period of 7 days, when the captain, most likely out of desperation and pressure from higher-ups, decided to make this trip smack dab in the middle of hurricane season. This flawed and fatal decision led to the gold, silver, and jewels being scattered underwater near the Sebastian Inlet. The peril of over 1,000 crew members led to the scattering of treasure across the county of Palm Beach, Florida, which led to it being designated as the Treasure Coast and is frequented by Indiana Jones hopefuls. However, the constant searching by tourists and locals alike has not been without yield. A family of treasure hunters received the ultimate reward when, over Labor Day weekend, one of the members spotted gold coins near a dive site. Eventually, their work in the region yielded them 8 heavy gold chains and 5 gold coins, as well as a gold ring. Another family duo, this time a mother and daughter pair, recovered a golden bird worth an estimated $800,000. While any findings must be split among the state of Florida, who gets 20%, and the owner of the 1715 salvage rights, Brent Bisbane, who gets half, any find is not only of historical value, but also of financial value. Camping while on a deer hunt at Victoria Peak, which is situated in northern Donna Ana County, which is in the White Sands Missile Range in central South New Mexico, Milton Ernest, also known as Doc, Noss, found far more valuable prey than mere deer. While caught in a rainstorm, Doc took shelter under a large rock, and while waiting out the deluge, his attention became focused on the fact that the rock looked somehow manipulated by man, unnatural. After some manipulation, he managed to get hold of the large hunk of rock and move it aside. There, he saw a small shaft leading directly into the mountain, with a wooden pole attached to the side of the hole. Saving the exploration of what he believed to be an abandoned mine shaft until he was properly outfitted, Doc kept his discovery from the other couple he was camping with. A few days later, properly dressed for splunking, Doc and his wife set out to see where the hole led. Foregoing use of the wooden pole for safety fears, Doc rappelled down the nearly 60-foot manhole into the mountain, landing in a small antechamber filled with what looked like cave drawings. This chamber was just a room leading to a shaft twice as long, leading its occupant another 125 feet into the mountain. This descent leveled off into a much larger and more open cavern, into which small rooms seemed to be carved out. Alarmingly, these rooms were not unoccupied. Doc found multiple skeletons, with their hands bound behind their backs and some sort of material tying them to a stake in the ground. This type of position suggested the former men had been abandoned in this underground prison for God only knows how long. Further exploration would unveil a burial chamber that housed more skeletons, 27 in all, according to Doc. Amidst the bones was treasure bountiful, coins, jewels, ancient artifacts, and letters dated from 1880 peppered the ground, next to horse saddles and a pile of what seemed to be thousands of iron bars, which occupied a large space of the cavern. Upon further inspection, these iron bars weighed upwards of 40 pounds and were obviously untransportable using Doc's current tool repertoire. Stuffing his pockets with coins and stashing a bejeweled sword on his person, he ascended to the top to share his findings with his eager wife. She, upon seeing his treasure and hearing of the items left behind, insisted he go back for one of the heavy metal items, as she suspected it might be highly valuable. And she was right, when after he went back into the shaft, he brought back a smaller bar with a golden sheen under the dust. These bars were solid gold. Elated at their discovery, the couple worked tirelessly to uncover the treasure, but recent legislation called the Gold Act forbade the private ownership of mined gold and prohibited the selling of it. This he would have to wait to cash in. As the couple continued to uncover incalculable riches, the list of stashed items grew longer. A diamond tiara, ancient texts, and gold abounded. But with greed and suspicion lingering over Doc's consciousness, he became paranoid and refused to let his wife take ownership of the treasure, instead taking it into the woods and burying it in unknown locations. He was so paranoid that the government or some other person would fake a claim on the gold that he burned up any paper documents that would prove he wasn't the owner and someone else was. After bringing up reportedly 300 gold bars, he hired a demolition company to dynamite the entrance to widen the hole. They instead blew it up and sealed the entrance off. Soon, under murky and underreported conditions, Doc Noss was murdered by an associate. Then, the U.S. military bought the land, and by the time his wife had fought for access to the cave, she was only given a measly 10 days in which to stake her claim on any found treasure, which had now been sitting in the cave, supposedly untouched, for months. Reports say that a man by the name of Lynn Porter knew a soldier stationed at the new White Sands Army Base, which was the location of the caves filled with treasure. Lynn Porter talked his friend and another soldier into exploring a narrow fissure in the mountain with him. Supposedly, they managed to find a new chamber filled with more gold, and they were able to remove a 2x7-inch gold bar from the enclosure. But when they reported the find to a major, he, along with the gold, was mysteriously shipped off to the Pentagon, along with his family, and the soldier who had brought Porter to the base was disciplined and warned against ever being in that vicinity again. Later, after many legal hurdles, the Noss family gained the court's permission to continue the treasure procurement, provided the family pay the army for the inconvenience. After much fundraising and planning, the excavation began, where a chamber was quickly found and then collapsed, raining human bones and rocks about, and causing the army to revoke the group's permission to be there, as the exorbitant rental fees of the property were supposedly past due. To date, no treasure has been located that we know of. Somewhere in the deep Rocky Mountains between Santa Fe and the Canadian border lies a box of treasure so vast that it could sustain you and your entire family for generations to come. Forrest Fenn is a multimillionaire art dealer from Santa Fe, New Mexico, who hid a treasure worth $1 to $3 million in the Rocky Mountains in the late 2000s. This treasure consists of artifacts he collected himself while operating his arts and artifacts trading post. In the 1980s, Fenn was diagnosed with kidney cancer, and he was told he would only have a few years to live. So, he decided to hide his most beloved artifacts and leave behind a legacy in the form of a modern-day treasure hunt. He survived his cancer, but 2 decades later, he went through with his plan anyway. Measuring 10 inches wide by 10 inches long, and 40 pounds when full of treasure, Fenn describes this box as being located somewhere that is 1. Not a graveyard nor a mine shaft, 2. Is not near any man-made structures, and 3. Is located above an elevation of 5,000 feet. The instructions for the reader are given in the form of a 6-stanza poem, which reads as follows. As I have gone alone in there, and with my treasures bold, I can keep my secret where, and hint of riches new and old. Begin it where warm waters halt, and take it in the canyon down. Not far, but too far to walk, put in below the home of Brown. From there it's no place for the meek, the end is ever drawing nigh, there'll be no paddle up your creek, just heavy loads and water high. If you've been wise and found the blaze, look quickly down, your quest to cease, but tarry scant with marvel gaze, just take the chest and go in peace. So why is it that I must go and leave my trove for all to seek? The answer I already know, I've done it tired, and now I'm weak. So hear me all and listen good, your effort will be worth the cold, If you are brave and in the wood, I give you title to the gold. While the intention of his poem is to get people out into the wilderness exploring, some have taken the thrill of the chase to new and fatal heights. Randy Bellew was a 54-year-old mechanic who had moved from Florida to Colorado to begin looking for the treasure full-time. He was found deceased near an opening to the Rio Grande River in Santa Fe on January 5, 2016, along with a small raft and his dog. In light of the most recent death, some critics called on Finn to prove that there was even treasure buried somewhere to begin with. Doug Preston, a fellow best-selling author and close former friend of Finn's, confirmed that he saw the treasure prior to its burial. Preston recalls it being filled with gold nuggets, rubies, emeralds, sapphires, and the like. While many of those who seek out Finn's fortune are disappointed that they come back empty-handed, the memories of their travels and exploits live on with them forever, which is something that the author believes is far more valuable than any golden treasure. The Florida Lamarr, or Flower of the Sea, was a Portuguese ship of 400 tons, built in Lisbon in 1502. Her maiden voyage was under the command of Gustavo da Gama, brother of Vasco da Gama. She was part of the second voyage to India by the Portuguese in 1505. On its return journey in the following year, the Florida Lamarr was forced to stop in Mozambique for almost a year for repairs. Then, she was taken out of the Lisbon-Goa route and participated in the conquest of Ormuz in 1507. She was also part of the Battle of Dhu in 1509 and the conquest of Goa in 1510. In 1511, the Portuguese set their sights on the Sultan of Malacca, whose capital, also called Malacca, was one of the richest cities in the world at that point of time. Flor de la Mar was a part of this conquest, led by Alfonso de Albuquerque, the governor of Portuguese India. The Portuguese expedition was successful, and Malacca became a part of their overseas empire. Apart from that, much treasure was gained from this undertaking. This was placed in the Flor de la Mar as it had a large capacity for the transport of goods to be brought back to the court of the King Manuel I in Lisbon. However, the ship's design made it difficult to maneuver when it was filled to its maximum capacity. Additionally, it had been repaired several times over the years, thus making it not the safest ship to transport the spoils of war. Apart from the treasures of Malacca, the Flor de la Mar is said to have been transporting an impressive tribute from the King of Siam to the Portuguese king, as well as all of de Albuquerque's personal fortune. This was the largest treasure ever assembled by the Portuguese Navy. By December 1511, the booty had been loaded up and Albuquerque was ready to embark for home on the Flor de la Mar. 2 days after they set sail, the ship was overtaken by a deadly storm. It survived the deluge for a few hours, until it finally floundered after hitting a reef off the coast of Sumatra. According to various accounts, the ship quickly broke into two after hitting the reef, and the onslaught of waves rapidly smashed the two halves to bits. Nearly all of the 400 people on board the ship lost their lives in the wreckage, except for Albuquerque, who escaped with several of his officers on the 16th century equivalent of a lifeboat. They quickly rowed away with only the clothes on their backs, leaving their treasure, now estimated to be worth around $2.6 billion, behind. Despite many attempts, the location of the wreckage and the loot it contained has never been found. Among the most serious expeditions to discover this lost treasure was the work of Southeast Asia Salvage, a company from Singapore who received permission from Indonesia in 1989 to search for the sunken ship. Their expedition was joined by Marx, who claims in Treasure Lost at Sea that they discovered, at the very least, the reef they think was responsible for the ship's demise. But before the team could begin a proper excavation of what they thought may be the main wreckage site, a dispute broke out between Malaysia, Portugal, and Indonesia as to who had the legitimate claim to any spoils that might be discovered. The expedition was grounded, and the location of the Flor de la Mar and its contents remain a mystery. To this day, the ship, once the prized possession of the Portuguese fleet, lies in wait somewhere near the Strait of Malacca, ready for a lucky underwater adventurer to disturb its resting place and strike it rich. Poverty Island is an island in Lake Michigan between St. Martin Island and Summer Island, just south of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Furious winds and lightning-swift currents have spawned a graveyard of sunken ships and, over the years, intriguing tales of lost treasure. It is believed to be the location of a treasure of 5 chests filled with gold bullion and gold coins today worth around $400 million. There are many theories of where the chests came from, one being that of James Strang, the king of Beaver Island, whose gold allegedly ended up in the lake after he was overthrown by his colony on a nearby island. The most plausible theory is that in 1863, as the tide of the Civil War was turning in favor of the Union, the Confederate States of America appealed to the French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte for a secret shipment of gold to bolster their economy. The delivery came down the St. Lawrence River between the United States and Canada and into Lake Michigan en route to Chicago, but somehow the Union became aware of the delivery and attacked the boat. The treasure is believed to rest deep beneath the cold waters of Lake Michigan. Richard Bennett, a professional diver and author of The Poverty Island Sunken Treasure Brief, has spent over 45 years and $100,000 of his own money searching for the Civil War treasure in Lake Michigan. Steve Harrington, a maritime historian, is convinced that the treasure is still located off the coast of Poverty Island. However, another historian, Chuck Feltner, debates the veracity of the treasure, as there's no record of a ship sinking there despite flawlessly kept records of ships lost over Lake Michigan. However, Richard believes that there would be no record, as the treasure was brought over during a clandestine operation. Despite the lack of a paper trail, the legend of the secret shipment has persisted. In 1929, a group of sailors were said to have snagged the 5 chests. They discovered the trunks while pulling up anchor, but before they could get it aboard, the anchor chain snapped and the treasure and the anchor were lost in the water. A few years later, Carl Jessen, the son of a Poverty Island lighthouse keeper, reported watching a salvage crew seeming to make an exciting discovery in Lake Michigan just before their ship was sunk by a storm. The sunken salvage ship Captain Lawrence from 1933 was discovered in 1993 and found not to contain any gold. Recently, in 2014, 2 men claimed to have found the shipwreck of what they claim to be the Griffin, a French ship. However, 3 years on, they have yet to provide any proof of their supposed $2 million discovery.